been known to be a great troubleshooter, Chris. Any tips on how to troubleshoot or some troubleshooting tools for us?
Well, my first suggestion would be to understand what it is you're working on. If you understand how it works, then you can more easily understand why it doesn't work. So that would be my first suggestion, is educate yourself about how EFI and engine management in general works. That said, let's not overcomplicate it. Let's say that we've got an engine that doesn't start. Keep in mind, we need 4 things in order for an engine to run. We need air, we need fuel, we need spark, and we need compression. It's pretty safe to assume that you're getting air. It's pretty safe to assume that your throttle body's not clogged and that no one shoved a banana up your tailpipe. So we can assume that you're getting air. Fuel. This is a Noid light. A Noid light is simply a little strobe light that plugs into your fuel injector connector. If you crank the engine over and this is flashing, then your fuel injectors are being commanded on. From there, it's really just a matter of whether or not you've got fuel pressure. If you have fuel pressure and your Noid light is flashing, you're getting fuel. Spark. This is a inline spark tester, and all you do with this is you put it anywhere in your ignition system. It can go between a plug and a plug wire, it can go between a plug wire and a distributor cap, it can go between the coil and the coil wire. Am I getting spark? If you are, all that leaves is compression, and compression can really be better summed up as mechanical failure. Do a compression check. If you're getting compression, and you've got spark, and you've got fuel, and you've got air, your engine runs. So one of those things must be missing or be, grossly off. Your spark is happening at the wrong time, or you're getting way too much fuel or not enough fuel. But that's where you start. You figure out where the problem lies, and once you've broken it down to that one portion, now you figure out why. If I don't have spark, there's really only so much it can be. If you understand how an ignition system works, and really this goes back to understanding what it is you're working on. If you understand how your ignition system works, well, then you can figure out why it doesn't. If you understand how your fuel supply system works, well, then you can understand why it doesn't. In a nutshell, that's it.
Well, Chris, thank you for those troubleshooting tips. They were very helpful, I'm sure. Well, thank you for your time, Chris.
Wait a minute, Robin, I have one question for Chris.
Okay.
Can I ask it from behind the camera?
Absolutely, go ahead.
I asked Chris this question earlier, and I want everyone else to hear his answer. I thought it had a lot of honesty in it. And the question was, Chris, what's your goal in business? And Chris, obviously it's making money, but what are you trying to accomplish with Braun?
What I would like everybody to realize is that engine management is not the voodoo that everybody thinks it is. It's really not that complicated. You've heard me say it time and time again: air, fuel, spark, compression. Certainly if you're using a speed density system and you have no way of measuring load, then yes, there's some voodoo involved, and it gets much more complex. But there's a lot of satisfaction out of selling somebody one of our management systems and having them install it and having some success. And I guess what I really want is I kind of live for that moment when the light comes on in a customer's head, when it's all installed and it's up and running, and they say, geez, that really wasn't all that hard. And I can do this, and I'm really not relying on anybody else anymore. That's all, just for people to understand. It really does not have to be the voodoo that everybody thinks it is. Engine management is really very, very simple. If you understand how it works, and if you have a good system to work with, it's really very simple.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions, Mike?
No, I'm done.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Chris, for having us out here again today.
Well, thanks for coming.
Very, very informative.
Thanks.
Thank you. This concludes the interview with Chris Richard. Thank you.
All right, I can't leave without first talking about this. I was snooping around in Chris's shop, and I have to ask you, Chris, what the heck is this? All right, what is it?
That's a cold air screen. That is what we put on the inlet of a mass air meter that's going to have a cold air kit in front of it. Yep.
Like this one?
So here's a 75 millimeter bullet. And so a perfect example would be a Fox Body Mustang. Here's your typical cold air kit. And so this elbow gets attached to the front of the mass airflow meter, and as the air comes around the elbow, keep in mind air doesn't like to turn. So as it's going through the elbow, number one, it gets thrown to the outer radius, and number two, it rolls and tumbles. So this turbulent air
No good.
hits the mass air meter, and the sensing wires, rather than picking up nice laminar flow, it's getting bombarded with pockets of air, and it makes for a very, very messy signal. So this here just goes over the front of the meter, and I would probably the best way to explain this is if anybody has ever removed the aerator from their kitchen sink and turned on the water, you notice that the water just kind of sprays all over the place.
Yes.
You put the aerator on, and you've got this perfectly straight stream of water that hits the bottom of the sink and doesn't even really splash. Air and water behave almost exactly the same way. So you put this little screen on there, the turbulent air hits it, nice and straight through the meter, and you get a perfect little signal. Yep.
Any restriction?
Well, yes and no. Obviously, it's in the way of the airflow, so you're going to get a little bit of restriction. However, compared to turbulent air, no. Air that hits this meter and is bouncing in all different directions becomes its own restriction. When you straighten it out, it actually flows way, way more air than it would without it. If you're using this mass air meter in an application where you don't have an elbow in the front, then you don't need it. And obviously, it'll flow more air without it than it will with it. But really, that kind of goes back to the same old question we covered before: is a mass air meter a restriction? Can be. You just make sure that you have an assembly that flows more air than you need, and so you wouldn't put that mass air meter on something making more than 550 horse. It becomes a restriction at that point.
The $1 million question. How much? Doesn't look like much. Here we go. $29.95. How much?
It comes with a cold air meter. If you order a meter from us with a cold air calibration, it's $20 more. That's why.
All right, Chris, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.